Okay, so good morning, everyone. So my name is Avro, and I will be taking the technical session for the TIBCO BW6 and C. So this would be my 16th batch running, and we will cover the overview of the session first, and then I'll take specific questions from you. Okay, so a little bit about myself. So I have like more than 14 years of experience in the industry, and I've worked in various TIBCO suite of products. I started from BW5, then worked extensively in development for BW6 and C, and also like I have certifications on the different TIBCO BW specific stacks. Also, I have certain cloud specific certifications like in Azure and AWS. I'm working on my GCP certification for now. So like I work in the BW integration part mostly on the cloud platform. Okay, and like as I mentioned, like this will be our 16th batch with Visualpath. So all the batches we had a good number of candidates, and most of the candidates cleared the TIBCO BW certifications for both 6 and C. So that's an achievement that we are all proud of. Coming to the course, basically. So what we have is overall we'll have a 40 hours plus session of online classes. So we have classes for each like 1 hour each week. So it's from Monday to Friday. We don't have classes on Saturday and Sunday. So for over the online classes, with online classes, like how we do is like we start with the basic concepts and then learn the concepts using hands-on. So most of this learning that you will be doing, those are basically hands-on based. So we are going to learn each concept and do one hands-on for each of them. So as much as possible, we try to learn using the hands-on, because that's what, in my experience, is something that helps students to grasp the knowledge and the concept faster. Okay, and that's why like you'll see like other institutes also offer similar courses, but ours is like an extensive one, like more than 40 hours. So I don't think any other institute offers similar wide array of courses. And the main reason for that, like why we have this 40 hours of classes, is because like the concepts are the same, but since we are like using hands-on to deal with the concepts, so that takes a bit of time. Like it's not something that I have any particular scenario created and I'll just run it over. It's not that. So we create the POCs in class. If there are any inputs coming from you, I accommodate that. So that way the hands-on actually builds up. Okay, so it's not something ready-made. So that's why it takes time. Sometimes we get some errors, then we debug it together and then fix it and then run it. So that takes time. So that's why we have 40 hours of classes. But like overall, you can expect around 43 or 44 classes covering like the entire space, like development, admin, and the deployment. Okay, so like classes are always very interactive. So like as I mentioned, like I take input from students. If you have something you want me to do, like say update in the POC, you're most welcome to provide the suggestions. Then we accommodate that. Also, suppose say you are have like what there are some scenarios like where I've seen that participants, they have interviews while the course is going on. So in those cases, I'll help them like take special sessions for those who are having interviews. I provide sample questions so that it helps them in the interviews. Also, if like you are stuck in somewhere in your project, say you have a very particular or very some technical issue that you want help to resolve, then I also like you can connect with here my the Visualpath team as well, and they will connect me to you so that we can like have a separate session where I can try to help you debug that issue. Okay, so in all, like we try to provide during the course of the classes as much support as possible so that it's easier for you to navigate through the development. And like one other main important like aspect of the course is we assume zero familiarity. So it means that even if you have not worked on TIBCO BW, or you may have worked on other technologies, not TIBCO, or you may be a fresher. so that won't matter because we will take each and every concept from scratch. So like many people, like many developers have prior BW5 experience, but even that is not required. So in case you are a fresher, even then that it will not be a problem because we will cover each and every concept, start from scratch and then move on. Okay. And definitely like since we are going step by step with the concepts, so like we start with the development, then move on to the admin part and then to deployment. So overall, like we covered all the aspects that are required for you as a TIBCO BW developer, whether you would be in the active development role or in the management role, like managing teams working on TIBCO, or maybe in the admin part. So we'll cover all of that. Okay. Also, if you are interested, I will share you the latest BW6 and C certification question materials, so that will help you to like clear the exam in the first shot. Okay. So I'll take a pause now. Let me know if you have any questions.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Fine. Okay. So then, like, okay, another thing, like since as I mentioned, like most of my sessions are very interactive. So even this one, so I will like try to make it interactive. So like I will be discussing some of the points now, like regarding the courses and like how we go about it. If you feel you have any questions, feel free to stop me and ask. Okay, I won't mind. Okay. So now this course is like regarding the BW6 and C. So it's basically a composite course. Uh, the one thing I would like to mention is like if some of you who may have certain experiences working on POCs in 6 and C, they would know that the development part for the 6 and C is around 95% similar. Okay, so there is not much of a difference. Even the studio version is the same. The only difference comes, and the major difference is when we go to the admin part. So the admin part of BW6 is on-premise, and that of C is on the cloud. So when you come to the admin part, that is totally different, and that like takes a different approach for both of them. Okay. But since the development part is the same, what we do is in our sessions is we take up the development first, and we continue the development sessions for BW6 and C together. Okay. So that would take around, in my experience, around 32 or 34 classes to cover that entire development for BW6 and C. Once we are done, we take up the admin sessions. So initially, a few classes goes into the general concept of the administration. So first, since that administration part like is where the BW6 and C differs, so we take up the BW6 administration part first, and like we take 3 or 4 classes to cover that, and then we move on to the BWC. Okay, and that takes around again 3 or 4 classes. Okay, so in all, like this is the overall flow, like how we do it. But as I mentioned, like if you have any like priorities, like say you have an interview and you have a priority topic to cover, so you can ask me, and if the class agrees, then we can have that. Like we can take up this that concept earlier. If not, I can have like one-on-one session with you and just explain you the concept so that like it's easier for you for going for the interview. Okay.
Hello. Hi, Abra.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
Like, do you cover any migration topics like migrating from 5 to 6?
Right. Yes. So that is also like during the development part only we cover. So these are like certain like standards and best practices. Within that, this is included. So within that, we have those error handling schemas, like scenarios, like where how we what's the best practice for handling the errors, and as well as the migration scenarios. So in migration scenarios, we create like we will create certain we will have BW5 standard codes that we will migrate, and we will see like what are the issues that we are facing and how to mitigate that.
Okay, okay. Like, what will be the timings of the session?
Okay, so timings of the session usually on Mondays to Fridays it should be around from 8 to 9.
Evening, right?
No, in the morning, IST morning.
Okay. Morning 8 to 9, it will be difficult for me.
Oh,
Okay.
actually, I work like where I work. It's like with the US client, so in the evening I don't have any time. So the morning is the only time that I can manage.
Oh, okay, okay, Abram. Like what's your
Mhm.
suggestion for me, like how to take these sessions then? Because I work
Uh,
from 9 to
uh
7 general shift.
9 to 7. Okay. So like it
Yeah,
will be difficult for you to like do it at 8. So we'll cover by 9.
yeah. Like you will be teaching from 8 to 9, right, morning?
Yes, 8 to 9. So
Okay.
your the working hour starts from 9, right?
Yes, yes. So
Okay.
I have to do half that. Then there will be no point of doing half things. Okay. Okay, please carry
Okay, you
on
can,
your. So,
yeah, you can
yeah.
discuss with Visualpath.
Okay, okay, okay.
Sure. Okay. So like coming back to the topic. So I'll just give you a brief overview since this is an overview session basically. So I'll give you an overview of how like BW6 and C work and like what's like majorly the difference between them. So first to the BW6. So BW6 basically like before we start with the understanding of BW6 and C. So if we try to get an understanding of like, why these products were introduced in the first place. So around 2012 or 2014, that the like till then, TIBCO's BW5 was one of the market leaders in the industry when it comes to integration. But around 2014 or 2012 or 2014, TIBCO like realized that there is a trend for like it was at the period when the cloud providers were slowly coming into the market. Okay. So there was a shift among the clients to move to the cloud. So TIBCO tried to tap in on that. Okay. The problem was with their BW5 software. BW5 was TIBCO's own proprietary software, so it was not industry standard. So it was a very generic UI, which was very different and like not generic at all in nature. So with this shift, what TIBCO tried to do is at one point, like at once, it tried to like create an UI based on Eclipse, which is the industry standard for development. At the same time, it tried to provide cloud native capabilities to the this particular like product. So they introduced two different products. One was BW6, which was like just a leap for the clients who were working with BW5, so that just they could create their course or migrate their course to BW6 and then deploy on premise. The other product that introduced for the C was like is the same studio, but it was designed exclusively for the cloud. So if the clients wanted to like they had already BW5 application set and they want to migrate to BWC and then deploy on cloud, they could use the BWC version. Okay, so that was the initial idea because at that time the attraction towards the cloud was like not that prominent. Slowly with time, what we found was the trend only increased because the more and more customers were interested in moving to cloud. So keeping that in mind, from 6.5 version onwards, TIBCO basically like merged the features of the two studios. So before that, till 6.4 version of BW6 and the 2.4 version of BWC, we see like they were two different products. Okay, like if you want to deploy on cloud, you'd have to use C, and if you have to deploy on TA, you have to use BW6 only. So that was the mandate initially. But with 6.5 and the BWC 2.4.5, the change that was brought about was that you could use any other studio for the development. And a new concept of deployment target was introduced. So this deployment target, what it did was like this allowed you to create the code only once and then change the target so as to modify your code internally so that it will be compatible to be deployed both on the studio as well as on the cloud. Okay. So along with the deployment target, a variety of other features were also introduced. So one of the most distinctive features of the BW6 is like it is Eclipse oriented. So that means the Java support is much wider in BW6 and C compared to that of the BW5. Okay, so it means that in BW5, what used to happen was if we had to use a say a Java code for certain custom functionality, we would use that like separately. Like we would create a custom Java code somewhere else, compile the code, and then use that jar in the TIBCO. Okay, but in the studio, since it is Eclipse in the background, we can create our own classes here, define the methods, and then directly use that in our application. Okay, so we need not depend on external imported jars. That's one plus point. Another plus point and like very important part is the uh, native feature of REST. So what happens is like in BW5, those of you have worked on BW5, they would know that working with REST in BW5 is like not very easy because BW5 was not initially built for REST. It was built for SOAP. So for BW5, we have a plugin for the BW5, we have a REST plugin. But for installing that plugin and making it work, and also for testing that application, it's like really difficult and takes a lot of time. In 6 and C, however, the application is REST native. So it was built with REST in mind. So what happens is just like we don't have any plugins. Also, the working is easier since we just need a few clicks to configure the REST interface. Okay, and a few clicks and a few drag and drop. So that's it. We don't need an elaborate setup for the REST implementation. So REST and SOAP, those are implemented in similar ways in 6, and since it is REST native, so it like working with REST becomes much easier, and creating of RESTful services or invoking of RESTful services becomes much easier in BW6 compared to that of BW5. Okay. So apart from that, we have like other features being introduced. For example, like we have uh, specific separation between the term properties and variables. So the terms were not well defined in BW5, but those are like very specific in BW6 and in the studio basically, which means that properties are entities which are similar to the global variables, and their values will not change throughout the application, throughout the life cycle of the application. On the other hand, variables are like entities whose values are likely to be changed during the life cycle of the application. So there is a clear distinction. Also, like this BW6, the studio is basically Maven compliant, which means that you can use the Maven file and the CI/CD pipeline in conjunction to deploy your application. So to ensure this, what happens is in the BW6 Studio, we have a very specific folder structure. So in BW5, we didn't have any specific folder structure. We could define any format we want. But in 6, we have a very specific folder structure because like we have this Maven compliance to keep in the mind. Okay. So because of that, like we have a very like strict format that we always need to follow, and all the BW6 and C projects, they follow the same format. Let me do one thing. Let me open the studio and try to show you like the specific format and what I am exactly talking about. One second. So this is a BW workspace that I am opening. So just for convenience, I'm using the BW6. I could do the same thing using the BWC application as well. Okay, so this is the first landing page that comes up, and this is the studio basically. So we'll like do this familiarization in the initial sessions of our actual batch, and then we'll start with the concepts. So this is like where you create the projects. So this project explorer can have multiple projects at a time. When you create a project for the first time, say I'll create one with a dummy name. This is the project name I assigned. And the deployment target, you can see that there are three options available. App space is for deployment of this application on-premise, that is on TEA. Container and TIBCO cloud are for deployment either on the generic cloud. So container is for generic cloud platform deployment, and TIBCO cloud is for deployment only to TIBCO cloud. Okay. Three options are available. By default, since this is BW6 Studio, app space is selected. If this was the BWCE Studio, then the container would have been selected. Okay. When I finish this, see we have the project setup. So this is the standard structure that I was speaking about. So since this studio is BW compliant, this MAPN compliant, that means that we each and every project structure of BW6 will contain this particular format. Okay, there cannot be any custom-made format for this. So we have this processes folder, we have service descriptors folder. Each particular folder here would be responsible for holding certain specific types of resources only. For example, processes will hold only processes of with the extension BWP. This is the process file. In BW5, this equivalent was dot process. So this is like the processes folder will contain this process files, service descriptors. If you click on new, it will contain WSDLs and JSONs for REST implementation. Okay. Similarly, for schemas, they will contain only XSLT files, while resources will contain all sort of connection resources. Okay. So we cannot have any custom-made folders here. We have to follow this Maven compliance structure. Okay. And each project here that contains two parts. Okay. So this part, this one that is open currently, this is called the module. So this is where we define all our development time setup. Okay. The other part is the application. This application is not used during the development, but it is used when we are going to create the ER. Okay. So there is a link between this development module and this application, which allows the application to generate the ER. Okay. So in plain terms, we use the module for development purposes, and once the development is complete, we go to the application, right click, and generate the ER. See, we have the option of creating the ER. Okay. So this is how, like, on a very high level, we work with Studio. So we have multiple uh, debugging options. So this option here that we can see on the top, this will allow you to debug your application step by step, just like we did in BW5. But since this is Studio, based on Eclipse, so we have the option to run this as a Java application as well. Okay. So Java application means like it will only run like it will not run activity by activity, but it will run as a script, and it will show you any input and output that you have configured. So that means is done using this run mode. Okay. So this is called the debug mode, and this is the run mode. So we have both the options in Studio. Okay. Another thing that I was mentioning was the REST nativeness. So this application is REST native, which means that we don't need any specific plugins to implement REST interfaces. Okay. So what happens is like in this process here, we need to change this process into a stateless format first. And once we have this process set as stateless, like we'll come later, like these are important concepts, like what is state and what is stateful, stateless. So for now, like if we set the process as stateless, see on this left hand side we have three icons. One of them is the REST implementation. So if we click on here, this is the wizard which allows us to create a REST interface in this process. Okay, so that means we don't need a specific, say, plugin to be implemented with installed before implementing REST. Secondly, since this is REST native, we have the Swagger engine inbuilt, which means that there is a Swagger engine running in the background. So when you create this REST application here and you start the application, what happens is there is a Swagger engine which also gets started. So you can use that functionality and you can test your application directly from the browser, okay, using the endpoint. You don't need any third party like Postman or SOAP UI to test your application to make sure it's working fine. Okay, so even that capability is there in the studio, which was like not there in BW5. Okay, any questions till now? Okay, then I'll move on. So this is a screenshot of the debug screen. So you can see like this is how the debug screen works. So this is where you see the activity by activity flow, just like in BW5. So this is the job data. So you can see all the jobs getting executed, and when you click on a particular activity here, so these are all the activities in a particular job. Okay. When you click on each of these activities, you'll see the individual job data for that activity here. So you can get the inputs and outputs at this level. Okay. Also, this portion, this is basically the deployment target, uh, the deployment server specifically. So which means that if you're deploying on app space, that is TEA, you can also control the TEA to some extent from the studio itself. Okay. So you can like deploy using the studio into the TEA, and you can like run or stop applications from the studio itself. Even that is supported, but we need certain configurations for that. Okay, so I'll be like making you familiarized with those concepts once we move to the BW6 development or the deployment part. Okay. So this is the setup for the SOAP service. So SOAP and REST look more or less similar. So it's done the same way. So this is the REST interface, which is like exposing these two operations, whereas this is the SOAP service, which is exposing these three operations here. Okay. So it's done in a similar way, and when we do the development discussions for the SOAP and REST, I will be covering this in detail. Now coming to the deployment part. So deployment part, like as I said, the main difference between these two products is the deployment. So BW6 is exclusively, like not exclusively, but like used for deployment on TEA. Okay, that is the on-premise. So for that, what is required, like we can do it in two ways. So we can use the command line to using the script, or we can use the TEA administrator to like deploy our application on the cloud. Okay. Okay, so I think Visualpath they have provided you some link or in a separate chat. Please respond to that chat. Okay, so this is the deployment on a very high level, the admin architecture of the TEA, where we have a set of domains, app spaces, and app nodes. Okay, so these app nodes actually run the runnable instance of the application, and app spaces are logical collections of the app nodes, and we have everything inside within a domain. Okay, and we have certain things called the BW agent, which communicates between the app spaces and the GUI, so that like once we go for the deployment, we can execute the commands, and the BW agent basically takes those commands and executes on the individual instances. Okay. So you can access this BW agent either using the TEA server or using the command line. Okay, so we'll discuss all this in detail in our BW6 admin sessions. So this is a like short comparison between 6 and 5. So like, some of you may not be from BW6 5 background, so I'll just skip it. Coming to the C part, so the most like notable feature, as I said, like is the differences in deployment. So deployment here, like in BW6, as we saw, it was the TA architecture. In C, however, like we have to deploy on the cloud. So for deploying on cloud, we cannot just go and deploy our application directly. Okay. So cloud has two formats. So either you can deploy as an IaaS, that is an integration application as a service, or as an iPaaS, integration platform as a service. Okay. So if like we use the iPaaS format, that is the platform as a service, what happens is you go to the cloud and you purchase certain VMs from them. Okay. So those VMs would act as your servers, and you can configure anything on there and you can run it. Okay. So that means it is like a normal physical server where you configure them using that like whatever applications you need. Suppose you want to install TIBCO there, you do, and you create the TA environment and you can deploy. Okay. So that iPaaS will support that. But iPaaS, the problem with that is like you are charged per minute for usage. So that means since the applicate that those machines on the cloud, they will be provisioned. And suppose say you receive request, say 100 requests in a single day. So apart from those 100 requests, the application remains active for 24 hours. Okay. So that means it's basically a waste of your money because you are charged per minute. So if that is the case, then iPaaS is not a very good solution, right? Because like you unnecessarily pay money for like only keeping that machine running. Okay. But you are actually not increasing your business because you are not receiving an equivalent number of hits. So on the other hand, the other option that we have for deployment is the IaaS, where we deploy that application as a service, and we are charged for the number of requests that we receive for a particular application. Okay. So for that approach, what we need is a thing called a containerization. So we bundle our application, that is the application year, along with any dependencies it may have, into something called a container, and then we deploy that container on the cloud. Okay. So for containerization, we use either the Docker or Cloud Foundry. So we can use either of them, but Docker is the most popular. So in our session also we will cover like using the Docker. So since this requires certain like extra knowledge apart from BW5, that is you need a little bit of knowledge and background for Docker setup, as well as for the cloud integration, like how to configure on cloud, how to push your application on cloud. So we will be covering that as well in our BWCE admin sessions. Okay. And I will provide you the links where you can install these softwares as much as possible, and you can like try yourself. Also for like once you're deployed on cloud, we use a orchestration layer, say the Kubernetes, for like overviewing them or like managing the deployed applications. So that also I will be like doing one session to like make you aware of how Kubernetes works and what Kubernetes actually is. Okay, so you use like hear these terms all around, like anyone who is working on the cloud platform with Studio or like may not be with BW itself, but whenever you go to a cloud platform, you will hear these terms like Kubernetes, then Docker. So these are the concepts that we will be doing, we will covering as part of the Studio, as part of the BWC deployment, because without that, the like understanding would be incomplete. Okay. So I will try to provide as much information as possible, as much is required for you. Okay. So this is the setup for the cloud deployment. So what we do, as I mentioned, once we have the ER, for if we want to deploy on TIBCO Cloud, we can directly push it from the studio. So that's a custom utilization. So we don't need all these steps. But if you want to deploy on any like a generic cloud, say GCP, AWS, or Azure, we have to first containerize our ER. Okay, adding all the dependencies of the application. And this containerization we do either using the Docker or the Pivotal Cloud Form. Okay. And once this containerization is done, that is we have converted our application into a container, we push that on the cloud platform, and then we from there we run it. Okay. So in our sessions also we will be covering this part, that is the Cloud Foundry, this Docker part. So how to install Docker and how to containerize your application, and then we'll see how we are going to push it on the cloud, and then how we are going to run it on the cloud. Okay, so this part we will cover in our session. Okay, so with that we come to the end of the overview session. So on a very high level, whatever we will be doing, I just outlined that. So let me know if you have any questions, anything regarding whatever we discussed, or anything else as well, like related to TIBCO.
Nothing, yeah, bro. Just my
Mhm.
concern is timings and migration. That's it. Like,
Right.
do you have
So
any plans to change the
mhm.
timings? Like you said, 8 to 9, right? Can it will be shift to 7 to 8? Or...
That
I'm just
I'll have to check
asking.
with. Yeah, yeah. So I understand. So that I'll have to check with Visualpath, once, taking into account everybody's compatibility. But yeah, so that is something we'll keep in mind. Just inform it to
Yeah,
Kirma and she can plan it that way.
yeah. Okay, okay, bro. Thanks. I forgot to ask your full name. What's your full
Mhm.
name, by the way?
Yeah, my name is Abro Hazra.
Bro, Hazra. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Because I missed the introduction slide. That's fine.
Oh, okay. Sure, no problem.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Anybody else? Any other questions? Anything that comes to your mind? Any doubts you have?
Hi, bro. I'm completely different. Like, I'm from BCom background. Like, this
Yeah.
is my, like, I don't have any knowledge about BW5. So I'm working under my brother. I'm working like as a real time scenarios. So I thought like
Mm-hmm.
maybe instead I thought like maybe I can convert into BW6.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have nothing to do with BW5, right? Like if you learn BW6, like
Uh, in the sense you're asking about development or the migration.
development.
Okay. So for development, see, BW6 development is entirely different from BW5. Okay. But if
Yeah.
you want, so we will be covering the concept so that you those are related. Okay. Because some of
Mhm.
the most of the activities you will see, whatever we have in BW5, more or less we have the same things in BW6.
Okay.
But if you are looking, if you are thinking that you need a background in BW5 to understand BW6, then that's not required, because I will be covering whatever background information is required.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Sweet. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bro, one small question from my side. Uh,
Yeah.
if we miss any of these classes in any of the weeks, like, do we have any
Hmm.
recorded sessions provided further?
Yes. So all the sessions are recorded, and
Hmm.
the recordings links will be provided to you, as well as if you miss a session, or say sometimes what happens is I may have some project delivery, so I may not be able to attend the session. So for those scenarios we will be taking some extra classes, so as to ensure that you are not compromised on the number of classes. But yes, recordings are always there, and you can always go back to that and check. Also in course of the, oh, I forgot to mention, so during the sessions, since most of the things we do is hands-on based, so I'll create the projects, and I'll refer to the slides, and at the end of those relevant sessions I will be sharing those to you as well. So apart from the recordings, you will have those projects at your disposal, as well as any other documents that we might discuss, or the slides as well. I will be sharing those as well. Okay.
Okay, so it will be shared on a daily basis, right? So every class will be shared on
Yes,
the end of the day or
correct, exactly. Exactly.
sometime
So every
also.
class will be recorded, and you'll have the link for every class. Even if you don't attend the classes, you'll still have the link.
Okay. Yes. The question is like it will be
Mhm.
shared on daily or like uh, if I attend the class today and
Not
if I miss
no
tomorrow
no.
and I have to join the other class on 12th, so there will be a
Hmm.
class missing on 11th, right? So in order
Right.
to cover that, they will be sharing on the same day or something like that.
No, it's like not like sharing every day, but what happens, see, like what actually, like I'll tell you what actually happens is, suppose say we are doing a, say a migration concept, okay? So for the migration concept, there are certain topics I need to touch, okay? Like say the reference like issues, then the call process issues, etc. So once we are done, like that particular topic is done, I will be sharing the relevant slide as well as the project. So that maybe not one day, but maybe that session takes like concept takes 3 days to cover. So after 3 days, I will be sharing that. Okay, in that manner.
Okay, okay, yeah, got it.
Okay.
So concept wise, we will be sharing, right?
Yes, concept wise, I will be sharing. Okay. Anyone else? Any other questions? Okay. If nothing, then I think we can end the session today. Thanks for your time, guys. Have a nice weekend, and you can respond to Visualpath chat with your mail ID so that she can like they can contact you for like any suggestions or like any information. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for your time.